These three disturbing true Smoky Mountains horror stories are inspired by real events. First, a family's day at a crowded overlook ends in a baffling search when their children vanish in seconds. Next, a man on a paved public trail disappears, leaving behind a single, impossible piece of evidence. And finally, a lone hiker's terrifying 911 call about being hunted is suddenly cut off. You'll want to stick around for that last story, because the Rangers found his phone, and it recorded for 14 minutes after his final scream. The parents walked 50 feet to their car. When they turned around, their children were gone. This was 1999 in the Great Smoky Mountains, a place of deep, heavy silence. The family was driving the Cades Cove Loop Road. It's the most visited area in the park, and for good reason. It's beautiful. But this story isn't about the beauty. It's a true story, and we tell it with respect for the family in this story. The horror here wasn't a monster. It was a series of small, perfect human mistakes. The family was 4 people. Garrett, the father, 38, Alara, his wife, 36, and their 2 children, Ronan, who was 8, and his little sister, Sloane, just 6. It was late afternoon, 3:45 p.m. The sun was getting low, and the sky was a dull gray color. It had been threatening rain all day, but it held off. The mountain air was cool. They'd stopped at the cable mill's scenic overlook. It's a popular spot. There's an old grist mill there, and you can hear the sound of the water and the wooden gears turning. It's peaceful. The family was packing up, getting ready to head out. Ronan and Sloane went to the wooden fence at the edge of the parking area, just a simple split-rail fence. They were looking out over a huge, wide-open field. There were other people around, maybe 20 or so, milling about, getting into their cars. Garrett was doing a final check. Pockets, keys. He stopped. He'd left the film camera in the car. It was 1999. You didn't just pull out a phone. You had one camera, and it had film in it. All the pictures from the day were on that roll. You had to go back. "Stay right here," Garrett told Ronan. He pointed right at the fence. "We're just grabbing the camera. Don't move." The car was only 50 feet away. You could count the steps. It was parked right there in the same lot. The kids were visible from the car. The sight line was clear. It took less than 2 minutes, probably more like 90 seconds. The sound of their boots on the gravel. The sound of the car key clicking in the lock. Garrett reached into the back seat, fumbling for the camera bag. Alara was right there with him. "Got it," he said, zipping the bag. They turned around. Garrett's eyes lifted to the fence line. It was empty. The spot where the 2 children had been standing was just a patch of empty air. It wasn't panic, not in the first second. In the first second, it was confusion, a deep, sharp wrongness. They must have followed us. He looked beside him. Nothing. "Ronan! Sloane!" Alara's voice was the first to break the stillness. It was a sharp, tight sound. It didn't carry. The mountains seemed to just swallow it. Garrett was already running. The sound of his boots on the gravel was loud, way too loud. It felt like the only sound in the world. He hit the railing with his hands, his eyes scanning, left, right. Nothing. Just an open field, a clear sight line all the way to the tree line, hundreds of yards away. The other tourists, the 20 witnesses, they were looking up now. Their faces were changing. They saw the look on Garrett's face, heard the sound in Alara's voice. Garrett felt the first real wave of that awful, climbing helplessness. He started shouting, his voice cracking, echoing off the wall of trees. "Did anyone see where they went?" 2 kids. A boy in a red shirt, a girl in a yellow jacket. Did anyone see them leave this fence? The answers came back in a scatter of head shakes. No, sorry. I didn't see anything. Then a man nearby spoke up. Wait, he said. I did see them. A boy and a girl. Over by that white van. He pointed to the other side of the small lot. They were running around. It looked like they were playing tag. Garrett's heart jumped. He and Alara ran to the van. It was still parked there, right where the man said. Empty. He dropped to his knees, the gravel biting into his jeans. He looked under it. Nothing. Around it, they were gone. And that's when it happened. The sky, which had been gray and threatening all afternoon, finally broke. The temperature dropped 10 degrees in a second. A few drops, then a downpour. The sound of the hard rain hitting the cars and the ground was a sudden, violent roar. The kids weren't just gone, they were gone, and a storm was here. The dread of isolation hit. They needed help right now. Garrett fumbled for his cell phone, a big brick of a thing in 1999. He flipped it open. No service, not a single bar. Alara was checking hers. Nothing. The entire Cades Cove loop, the entire parking area, was a complete technological dead zone. There was no 911 call to make. No way to get help to them. Garrett made the only decision he could. I'm driving to the ranger station. It's 10 miles. You stay here. You keep yelling. You keep looking. The sound of his car engine starting, the tires spitting gravel as he pulled away, was a catastrophic sound. It was the sound of a system failure, the sound of a man leaving his wife alone at the scene where his children just vanished, in the middle of a thunderstorm. Every minute he spent on that winding 10-mile road, the windshield wipers slapping furiously, was another minute the children were out in that rain. Another minute they were getting colder. Alara stayed behind. Her voice became raw, cracking as she called their names into the noise of the storm. Ronan, Sloan. The words were just snatched away by the wind. By the time the initial report was finally filed, by the time the Rangers understood the raw panic in Garrett's voice, by the time the massive search and rescue effort was finally scrambled, over an hour had been lost. A full critical hour. Search and rescue descended. They locked the Cades Cove loop down. For 5 straight days, more than 200 people, professionals, volunteers, dog teams, and aircraft, scoured that area. They started at the point of disappearance, that fence line, and worked outward in a massive, coordinated grid search. They were shoulder to shoulder, walking, looking for anything. A piece of clothing, a footprint, a single thread from a yellow jacket. They found nothing, no trace. The storm had washed it all away. Any track, any scent was gone. The ground was a muddy, trampled mess. The professionals were baffled. The search focused on abduction. It had to be. The logic was cold. The kids were seen by the van. The van was still there. They vanished in an instant. They must have been taken. And this is where the story turns cold. This is the part that stays with you. It's because of what the searchers missed. A primary team was tasked with checking the dense thicket of rhododendron bushes that bordered that open field. In the Smoky Mountains, they call that a rhodo hell. It's a dark, knotted, tangled maze of branches and waxy green leaves. It's so dense it can blot out the sun at noon. It's almost impossible to push through. The search team on day 3 was exhausted. They were demoralized. They were soaked. They were working on the abduction theory. They were convinced the children couldn't have made it far without leaving a sign. Their diligence failed. They pushed 20 feet into that green hell. They yelled. They listened. They heard nothing but the drip of water from the leaves. They saw nothing but a wall of green. and they convinced themselves the children couldn't possibly be inside that tangle. It was half-assed work. It was born from overwhelming exhaustion and a bad theory. They were simply too tired to push 20 more feet into the darkness. But this is the horror that remains. The official search, built on thousands of man-hours and countless resources, was designed to find a body or an abductor. It was designed to restore order, and it failed. Ronan and Sloan, disoriented, had wandered from the van. Frightened by the shouting and the sudden violent crack of thunder, they did what scared kids do. They ran from the noise. And when the cold rain started to fall, they did what any person would do. They looked for shelter. They found a small, concealed hollow, a dark overhang under a fallen log, deep inside that rhododendron maze. They crawled inside, out of the storm, to wait. They were not taken by a criminal. They were not removed by a ghost. They were swallowed by a series of small, understandable human errors. The momentary distraction of parents, the agonizing loss of time due to a lack of technology, and the final, crushing failure of diligence by good men who were just too tired. The case was a media sensation, but then the trail went cold. Weeks later, a hiker going far off trail found them. He found the hollow log. The children were inside, holding each other. They had died from hypothermia and starvation. They were less than a quarter mile from the parking lot where they were last seen. The terrifying fact is that they didn't vanish due to a dark conspiracy. They were there, waiting, while the search parties failed. This case is a permanent scar on that landscape. It's a reminder of the sheer helplessness you feel when the people and systems designed to protect you fail, not from malice, just because they're human. So hold your kids close, love them, because sometimes the difference between a happy ending and a lifetime of what-ifs is just 20 feet of tangled brush that no one thought to check. He vanished 200 feet from his car. They found his belongings 6 miles away, in terrain he couldn't have crossed, neatly packed inside a backpack that wasn't his. This is the story of that impossibility. Our world is built on rules. There is gravity, there is time, and there is the ground beneath our feet. We trust these rules. In the wilderness, there are other rules. The mountains are dangerous, but their dangers are known. There are storms, there are bears, and there are the consequences of human error. A forgotten map, a moment of arrogance, a step taken in the dark. These things are tragic, but they are logical. They are explainable. This story is not about that. This is the story of an event in 2018 that violated every known rule on a piece of ground that should have been the safest in the entire national park. The location was Klingman's Dome, the highest point in the Great Smoky Mountains. At 6,643 feet, it is a place of cold, clear air and impossible views. It is also, for all intents and purposes, a tourist trap. The path to the iconic observation tower is not a rugged trail. It is a wide, paved walkway. On any given day, it is crowded with families, photographers, and casual visitors. The air is filled with the sound of their chatter, the click of their cameras, and the persistent whistling wind. It is a place where the wild has been tamed by asphalt. The story begins with a 34-year-old man named Rhett. He was there with his girlfriend, Heather. Rhett was not an expert, but he wasn't a complete novice either. His knowledge came mostly from watching YouTube videos. His training consisted of some backyard camping. He had bought all the right gear, but this trip was his first real experience testing his skills. It wasn't the brightest move. Things weren't going well. They had been arguing a bit on the drive up, the tension filling the small car. At the summit, standing in the cold, thin air, Rhett finally said he needed some separation. He needed space. So they split up. Heather signed up for a guided tour, letting a ranger lead her and a group through the area's history. Rhett put in his earbuds to take a self-guided audio tour. Their tour times were staggered. He started his walk. He was wearing a bright yellow backpack, a common safety color meant to stand out. It was 2:15 p.m. Multiple witnesses saw him, including a woman named Opal. He was just another hiker, a man in his prime, moving with a confident stride, his yellow pack a bright spot on the trail. He was 100 feet from his car. Then 150. He was just another face in the crowd, surrounded by the noise and safety of other people. He was walking on solid pavement. At the 200-foot mark, the paved trail curves. To the left is the forest. It is a dense, dark wall of ancient spruce and fir. The trees grow right up to the edge of the pavement, their shadows cutting across the path. Opal and all the other witnesses recalled nothing unusual. There was no shout. There was no sound of a struggle, no snap of a branch, no cry for help. The chatter of the crowd continued. The wind whistled. Rhett was there one moment, a solid part of the world, and the next, he was not. He did not run into the woods. He did not stumble. He did not cry out. He was simply walking and then he was gone. He had vanished from a piece of pavement in broad daylight, in the middle of a crowd. At 4:30 p.m., the first alarm was raised. Heather's guided tour had ended. She felt calmer, ready to find Rhett and make up. She walked back to the car, expecting to see him waiting. But he wasn't there. His car was still in the lot, cold and silent. She called his name. She looked up the paved path, her annoyance from the fight turning into a cold, prickling unease. She found the first park ranger, her voice tight with a growing panic. By morning, the operation had exploded. This was not a simple search. It was a full-scale deployment. 75 trained personnel were on the mountain. They represented a dozen different agencies, the best of the best in search and rescue. They set up a command post in the parking lot, a small city of vehicles and tense, quiet professionals. A helicopter was brought in, its blades beating the air, thwack, 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 a sound of mechanical hope against the indifferent rock. K9 units were assembled, their handlers leading them to the car. The dogs were the first to find the problem. The K9s, with their impossibly sensitive noses, can follow a trail of scent for days. The handler brought the dog to Rhett's car. The dog found the scent easily. It pulled the handler forward, its nose to the ground, its tail wagging with purpose. It followed Rhett's path from the car door. It got onto the paved walkway. It walked past the 100-foot mark, past the 150-foot mark. And then, at the 200-foot mark, the dog stopped. It whimpered, a sound of confusion, and turned in circles. It sniffed the air, then the pavement, then the air again. The scent did not go left into the woods. It did not go right. It did not continue up the path. It simply ended. It stopped as if the man had been plucked from the sky, leaving no trace. The handler, a man who had trusted his partner for years, could only stare. He had never seen his dog fail. Not like this. The human searchers found the same impossible nothing. The 75 personnel formed a line, shoulder to shoulder, and scoured the area. They checked the paved path for any scuff, any sign of a struggle, any dropped item. They found nothing. They moved off the path into the woods. The ground there is soft, covered in moss and decades of fallen needles. It is a perfect surface to hold a footprint, a broken branch, a sign of frantic passage. They found nothing. No footprints, no snapped twigs, no disturbed earth. The helicopter circled above, its thermal imaging camera scanning the green canopy. The forest is vast, but technology can see through it. The camera can find the heat of a living body, or even one that has recently died. The operators in the sky saw the heat signatures of deer. They saw the searchers themselves, bright orange dots moving in a line. They did not see Rhett. For 3 days this continued. The search was a massive, expensive, and technically advanced operation, and it was a total baffling failure. The lead investigator, Ranger Holden, stood at the command post, a map spread on the hood of his truck. He was a man who believed in evidence. He believed in footprints and broken branches. He was now the commander of a search for a ghost. The mountain had not taken the man. The rules had taken him. The laws of physics had been suspended on a 200-foot stretch of pavement. And then, 6 miles away, another search team found the backpack. The location was an area known as Charlie's Bunyan. To call it 6 miles away is a lie. It is not 6 miles of walking. The 2 points, Klingman's Dome and Charlie's Bunyan, are separated by a chasm of reality. The terrain between them is a nightmare of sheer cliffs, impassable ravines, and unscalable rock faces. It is a place that even expert mountaineers would not attempt without thousands of dollars in specialized climbing gear. Rhett had no climbing equipment. He had no ropes, no harness, no gear to survive a single night, let alone traverse an impossible landscape. The search team at Charlie's Bunyan found the backpack sitting on a rock, as if it had been placed there. They radioed it in. Holden felt a jolt of hope. "We have a backpack," the radio crackled. Finally, a piece of evidence. He told them to bring it in. They brought the pack to the command post. It was dark blue. Holden had Heather brought to the tent to identify it. This was the moment. He was hoping for relief, for a clue. He pointed to the bag. "Is this his?" Heather's face went pale. She shook her head, her voice a whisper. "What?" "Number. That's not his backpack." Rhett's backpack was bright yellow. Holden and the other rangers froze. The air in the tent became thick and cold. "Are you sure?" Holden asked. "Of course I'm sure," she said, her voice shaking. "I bought it for him. It was yellow." A grim-faced ranger, his hands now in gloves, unzipped the front pouch of the strange blue pack. Inside, everything was neat. Rhett's wallet was in the top pouch, his cell phone, its battery long dead, his car keys. Nothing was missing. This was not the work of an animal. This was not the work of a human robber. This was something else. This was a purposeful, calm, and meticulous transfer of property. Someone or something had taken Rhett and moved his most personal belongings from his yellow pack into this strange new blue one, sealing them up 6 impossible miles away. Holden and his team scoured the maps. They checked the 6-mile stretch of the Appalachian Trail that winds its way around the impassable terrain. The search teams on that trail found the same thing they had found at the Dome. 0 footprints, no broken branches, no signs of passage. Rhett had not climbed the cliffs. He had not walked the trail, but his belongings had been transported across a physical barrier he could not have breached. The search was quietly scaled back. The 75 personnel went home. The helicopter flew away. The K-9s were put back in their trucks. Rhett was never found. No part of him, no boot, no piece of clothing ever turned up. The case remains open with the National Park Service. It is not a cold case. It is a question mark, a piece of cosmic graffiti on the side of a mountain. That blue backpack now sits in an evidence locker, a normal object that proves an impossible thing happened. The real horror of that day in 2018 isn't that the mountain is dangerous. It's the blue backpack itself. It's a cold receipt for an impossible transaction. A simple monster, a bear, or a human killer, they just take. They are chaotic. This was not chaos. This was meticulous. This was calm. Something had the power to pluck a man from a paved trail, cross an impossible distance, and then had the composure to neatly transfer his wallet, his keys, and his phone into a new bag. It leaves the one terrifying, unanswerable question. Why? Why switch the backpacks? He called 911 saying something was following him. Rangers found his phone still recording. The last 14 minutes of audio has never been released. The man at the center of this, his name was Lyle. He was 29 years old. It all happened back in August of 2013, out on the Alum Cave Trail in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. This isn't some hidden path. It's a popular trail 5 miles long, and people are on it all the time, hiking to the bluffs. The dispatch log noted Lyle was hiking solo. That was just a fact. He had a pack on his back and his boots were worn in. He was moving fast, trying to make good time before the sun started to dip behind the peaks. The woods around him felt quiet, but it was a heavy quiet, the kind that makes the hair on your arm stand up. The usual chirps and rustles, the sound of insects, all of it had gone still. He was about 3.2 miles in, deep into the trail, when he pulled out his phone. The call came in at 4:17 p.m. In a small, windowless office 40 miles away, a dispatcher named Delphia sat at her console. Her job had long ago sanded down any capacity for surprise. She knew a real crisis from a bored prank call within the first 2 words. When the phone rang, the tone of the call made her sit up straight. This was real trouble. The voice on the other end was Lyle's. He didn't sound panicked, not yet. He was quiet, controlled, but his breathing was rough on the exhale. He told her his name. He told her his location, mile marker 3.2 on the Alum Cave Trail. Then he said the words, "Something is following me." Delphia went straight to the checklist. "Sir, can you describe it? Is it an animal? A bear, perhaps?" Lyle's answer was fast, no hesitation. "It's not an animal. It's staying just out of sight." Delphia had heard it all before. Panic, dehydration, people seeing things that weren't there. She tried to keep him calm, but Lyle was certain. "It's too smart," he said. He told her it was heavy. He could hear it moving, but only when he moved. He said when he stopped walking, it stopped walking. He said it was hiding, always just behind the thickest part of the rhododendrons, always 20 or 30 feet back. Just watching. Delphia did her job. She kept him on the line. She told him rangers were being dispatched immediately. She typed the codes into her screen, her face lit by the blue glow of the monitor. But she knew the hard math of the park. The nearest patrol was at the park entrance. It would take them an hour, maybe more, to drive to the trailhead and then hike 3 miles in, moving fast. Help was not coming soon. Lyle was on his own, and he knew it. Lyle kept walking faster now. His boots made a loud crunching sound on the gravel path. He was trying to put distance between him and the thing. But every 50 yards he'd stop, dead still. He'd hold his breath, listening, the phone still pressed to his ear. And the second his own footsteps went quiet, he heard it. A new sound, a heavy footstep in the leaves, a single muffled thud. Then, silence again. It confirmed the thing had stopped too. It was mirroring him. Delphia, listening on the line, heard the stark fear in his voice as he described it. This wasn't just a chance encounter. This wasn't a bear crossing his path. In Lyle's mind, this was a hunt, That feeling, the idea that he was being played with, that this thing knew exactly what it was doing, started to make the woods feel small. The trees felt like they were closing in. Lyle's voice got tight. He was getting frustrated, scared. He kept asking Delphia where the Rangers were. "Where are they?" "You've got to send someone." She had to tell him again. They were on their way, but it would be a while. The desperation in his voice was growing. Then his tone changed. He wasn't yelling anymore. He was miles from anyone, but he started to whisper. He was trying to hide his own sounds, leaning his head toward his phone's microphone. The sound of his own breathing, fast and shallow, was now a main part of the call. Delphia had to strain to hear him, turning up the volume on her headset. This shift from anger to a terrified whisper was the moment she knew this was bad. He was hiding from something that was right there with him. Then, at 4:23 p.m., the call changed again. Lyle stopped walking. He was standing perfectly still. His voice dropped so low it was almost not there. He was listening to the sounds behind him. "It's getting closer," he rasped to the dispatcher. "I can hear it breathing." Delphia asked him what it sounded like. What Lyle said next made the hair on her arms stand up. He said, "It sounds wet. Not like a person. It sounds like a bellows opening and closing." Delphia heard it too, faintly. A wet, strange sound that she couldn't place. It didn't sound like any bear she'd ever heard on a call. That one detail, coming through her headset, seemed to be the breaking point for Lyle. He wasn't just scared anymore. He was convinced. He was being hunted by something that, to him, just shouldn't exist. The next few minutes on the audio log were just chaos. Lyle was running. He wasn't on the trail anymore. He was crashing through the thick undergrowth, pushing past branches, trying to get away, trying to hide. The sound of his pack thumping against his back, his lungs burning, all of it came through the phone. It was just noise and panting, but the thing following him wasn't crashing. It was moving with him. Delphia could hear it. There was just a heavy whooshing sound, the thud of big feet on the damp earth. It was moving through the thick woods like it was nothing. It was keeping up. It was closing the distance. At 4:29 p.m., a short, desperate sound came from Lyle. It was a sob. He stopped running. He must have turned around. He must have faced it. He stood there for over a minute. The phone recorded the sound of him breathing, just huge, ragged, shuddering gulps of air. The creature had stopped too. The quiet that fell between them was thick, suffocating. The phone only recorded the sound of the wind moving through the leaves, and under that, the frantic beat of Lyle's own heart, amplified by the microphone. He didn't say a word. He just stood there, breathing, waiting. At 4:31 p.m., it was over. First, there was a sound right next to the phone. A wet, guttural snort, so close it distorted the microphone. Then Lyle screamed. It was a single, awful sound. But it was cut off. It just stopped, right in the middle, as if a hand had been clamped over his mouth. It was the sound of a voice being shut off instantly. The scream ended. The running ended. The breathing ended. Lyle was gone. But the phone did not hang up. The line stayed connected. The phone was still on. The call still active. Delphia was yelling into her headset. "Lyle! Lyle! Are you there, sir?" Nothing. Just the open, dead air of the line. The dispatch log marked the incident as ongoing. She sat there, listening to nothing, for 47 minutes. Ranger Ogle was the first one to arrive. It was 47 minutes after the scream. Ogle was a 20-year veteran. He'd seen everything these mountains could throw at a person. He got to mile marker 3.2 and found the scene. It was quiet, too quiet, just as Lyle had said. Lyle's pack was there, tossed carelessly aside, one of the straps torn. And lying in the dirt next to a deeply indented boot print was his cell phone. It was still on, the screen dark. Ogle picked it up and saw the call was still connected. The battery was at 67%. The phone had kept recording for 14 minutes after Lyle went silent. Ogle and his small team, they listened to those final 14 minutes of audio. What they heard, they never forgot. But they also never repeated. The audio contained no more human sounds, no shouts, no struggling, no sign of a fight, just the thick, ambient noise of the deep woods. But underneath that, there were other sounds. There was a repeating, heavy thud, and then a long, slow scraping noise. It was the sound of a heavy sack, something full of rocks, being dragged across the dirt and leaves. Thud, scrape, thud, scrape. And through it all, that same breathing Lyle had described, a wet bellowing sound that was definitely not human. The sound didn't move away. It didn't fade into the distance. It moved in circles. The thing had not fled the scene. It was lingering. It was still there, right by the phone, for 14 full minutes. Lyle was never found. No body, no blood, no trace. The Alum Cave Trail was shut down by the National Park Service for 3 months after the incident. The official report is a missing persons case with unusual circumstances. But the audio tape, those final 14 minutes, that's the real story. It was immediately classified. It was filed away in the deepest corner of the NPS archives. It has never been publicly released. The rangers who heard it, including Ogle, refused to discuss its contents. They claimed a memory lapse, or just flat out said they wouldn't talk about it. They put up a wall of silence. So, what was on that trail? Was it just a bear, a big one, and Lyle was just scared, confused, maybe not in his right mind? Did he fall? Did he just imagine that breathing sound? Maybe. You can try to explain it all away, but you can't get past that tape. That's the part that sticks. We don't have the evidence. We can't hear it for ourselves. It's locked away in a file, safe from the public. All we have is the official report and the stories from the rangers who went quiet. They know what they heard. They know the sound of a creature standing over that phone, breathing, and dragging something heavy into the dark. And we're just left to wonder. We're left to hike those same trails and hope we never hear it for ourselves.